Hey, future Black and Latinx leaders. You are listening to the Keys to the Office podcast, where we interview amazing professionals who share their individual career paths to set you up for success. We're giving you the keys to the office, and all you need to do is show up ready to unlock the door. Let's jump into today's episode.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Keys family. I'm excited about chatting with our guest today. We have the pleasure of having the one and only Tina Baxter here, just a rock star in the medical field, involved in just about everything related to the community. She's done so much for so long. You know, in addition to teaching and providing that mentorship piece that we often talk about here. We'll get into all of that, but join me in welcoming Tina Baxter to the Keys to the Office podcast. So tell us who you are. In addition to being the term is what legal nurse consultant, which was the first time I've ever heard of that. So you'll have to tell me about it.
Sure.
And of course, a nurse practitioner. First, welcome. Tell us who you are. Tell us what you do.
Okay. Well, I am a nurse practitioner. My specialty is geriatrics and my subspecialty is geropsychiatry. I've been in the healthcare field for over 25 years and actually started, if you want to get technical, in junior high.
How?
I started in junior high because my mom was a church nurse. And if you know anything about the African-American church, oftentimes you have nurses and lay people that are trained to be nurses in the church. And she volunteered at the nursing home. And so anywhere my mom volunteered, we were automatic volunteers.
Oh, wow. I love it, though.
So I started out volunteering at the nursing home. We would have Bible study with them and then sometimes help them in activities and things like that. So I started out volunteering very young. And then in high school, I got a couple of internships where I got to work in the lab. So I worked in the lab for 3 years in high school during the summer.
Wow.
And by my last year, they had gotten so used to me that they were short-staffed that they gave me my own section. So I was the queen of poop. I got to test all the rotavirus.
I'm like, please explain what that means.
As a high school student, they let me at the medical college, because I'd been worked there for 3 summers. Anybody that came in with some sort of gastrointestinal illness and they wanted to make sure they didn't have rotavirus, they get a stool sample. And so my job was to take the sample and run it through the machine and determine if it had rotavirus, et cetera. And then they also let me review vaginal swabs for chlamydia. And I would look for the chlamydia. And then if I thought I saw something, right, they would give it to the pathologist who would confirm what I was seeing because they're so good with a microscope. So wow. I started young in the medical field and it really enjoyed everything that had to do with science. And that's how I got started.
Wow. Okay. So wait a minute. Let me process all that. First of all, starting in junior high, right? I thought I was doing something when I started working in high school. I was 13 with my first job, but we're talking junior high. You started getting experience. So you knew early on that this is what you wanted to do. Or let me rephrase that question. Is it because you were raised in that environment that you became attracted to, or you think it was just naturally in you to be a nurse?
I think it was naturally in me, but I didn't recognize it. I was always interested in math and science and things like that. And actually, if you had asked me at that age, I was going to be an astrophysicist.
Okay. I don't hear that often. So this is
I wanted to
good.
go to outer space.
I
I wanted to join, the space camp and all of that, those movies and things like that had come out during that time.
Yeah.
So that's what I was very much interested in. But I was always interested in math and science and things like that. And so my parents bought for me one Christmas, I'll never forget it. I got my first microscope and my first chemistry set, and I set up my lab. And so I had a little lab. It was a room off of our bedroom, and we'd run experiments and things like that. So I was very good with a microscope because I had all that practice prior to going to work for the lab. So I knew how to look through a microscope. And so I did all that kind of stuff. And I was so interested in research and learning these different things. And I finally settled on something in the medical field when I was in high school. And my intention at that time was to go to medical school.
Okay.
And I have a BA in biology, on that pre-med track. And as I was doing that, I discovered something. I didn't like how medicine is focused on that one little problem, right? I just didn't like that. It's just something that didn't fit with me.
Okay.
Because my question was, okay, I understand you have heart disease, but why do you have heart disease? And how can we help you change your lifestyle to manage your heart disease?
Oh, wow.
And so I discovered they took all the fun out of it for me.
Yeah.
And I'm a person who sat for the MCAT twice. Okay. So I was serious about going to medical school.
Okay.
Until my last year. And I realized that is not what I want to do. So I didn't know what to do as a fifth-year senior. And this is for all those kids out there that think they're going to one path and then they might change their mind, right?
Talk about it.
Yes. Senior, I've taken all the classes. My parents paid for everything at a very expensive private Christian school. And then I changed my mind.
It happens.
And so I didn't know what to do. So I got a job working as a CNA.
Okay.
And I'm like, I can help take care of people and get them up. So I learned what nurses did because I worked as a CNA, and I looked at the nurses and I said, well, if they can do that, I can do this too. And that's what got me involved to thinking about nursing. And I thought, well, I'll become a nurse first. And if I decide to go to medical school later, I'll go to medical school. But in the back of my mind, I knew I never really wanted to go. And I have physicians in my family. I have physicians and medical personnel in my family. So it wasn't like I didn't know. Right. I just looked at the lifestyle and I thought, here I have a cousin, and bless his heart, he's a prominent OBGYN, one of two at the time when I was working with him. I spent 2 weeks with him in Arkansas, and he has all the stuff. He had the plane and he had all the stuff, all the toys, right?
Right.
But he never got to enjoy them.
Okay.
And I thought, I don't want to live this life.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
And so I decided to go to nursing school. So I called them up 2 weeks before the semester started. And I said, I want to go to your school. Let me in. At another very expensive private Christian college, of course. And they're like, well, first of all, you have to be accepted to the university, and and then you get accepted to school of nursing. Meanwhile, my lease is up where I was living, so I had to find a place to go. And I said, okay, let me in. I want to transfer to your school. I only have 2 classes to take to graduate with my biology degree. I had a math class and a Bible class that I had to take. That was it. Everything else is done. I'm 5th-year senior. With two minors. Okay. So you kind of know who I am.
Wow.
And so they said, okay, they got my transcripts, got me into the university. Then a week later, they said, oh, you've been accepted into the School of Nursing. They're excited to have you. You'll come in as a sophomore because you have to take all the nursing classes. So I didn't have to take any prereqs because all that was done.
Right.
All I had to do, and me, I don't like to leave things unfinished. So I took my Bible class, I took my math class, transferred those credits back. So I have a BA in biology. And then it looks like I graduated the following year with at the end of that, with a BSN in nursing. Well, when I sat in my first nursing class, that's when I realized I found my tribe. This is where I was supposed to be. And I actually had a missionary prophesy over me to say I would be a great nurse. And of course, I didn't receive it at the time because I'm like, I am supposed to be a doctor.
Right, right.
That's what I was supposed to be, right? In my mind, that's what I'm supposed to be. But as I got closer to it, I realized I don't want that lifestyle.
Yeah.
I enjoyed being a nurse. I wanted to be the one to sit with a patient in their last hours. I work for hospice too, by the way, in their last hours and hold their hand as they died.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I wanted to do. And so I chose nursing over medicine. People don't believe me when I say that because in their mind, they think, oh, you want to be the doctor. And I get that. And there's room for that. And there are people who, my best friend from college became a physician. She's a wonderful pediatrician.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't want that lifestyle.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that. And not to say, nursing is hard. It's not for the faint of heart either. You still have to take a lot of those classes that, they take in medical school. You kind of have to take those same classes, to get you ready for that. So I had all the chemistry and the biology and all of that. I took all those courses, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I found that nursing is where I wanted to be. So fast forward, I wanted to do something a little bit different with my nursing career. Didn't want to be at the bedside any longer. I was getting a little older because I was older when I went back to get my nursing degree because, I'd spent all that time doing the other stuff, right?
Yep.
And a friend of mine was the dean of a university. I'd sat on a committee with her as a nursing student. And they had a course to become a parish nurse. See how this comes all full circle.
Wow.
So I wanted to take this class to be a church nurse, and you could take it for master's credit. So I thought, well, I might want to go to grad school. That's one of the things I wanted to do. So I'll take it for master's credit. I'll apply, and see if I can handle that and work full time as a supervisor at the hospital. So I'm a supervisor in psychiatry at the hospital on evening shift. And so I take this class, and of course, we go through it. And she says to me, well, why aren't you into the graduate program? And I, told her, I don't want to retake my GRE. It was long enough ago.
Yeah.
I have to retake it. In my undergrad for biology, you had to pass not just take the GRE, the general, but you had to pass your biology subject test.
Okay.
In order to get your degree. So I was not taking the test again because it was thinking hard. You sweated bullets because in order to get your degree, you had to pass the biology subject test for that. Because if you wanted to go on and, become a neurobiologist, which is something I thought about at one time or another, all those different fields in graduate school, you had to have that. So I didn't want to retake it. So she said, well, I think you'd be good in this. You'd be good in this. And I was on the fence, him and haw. And so I get a letter in the mail that says, you have been provisionally accepted into the graduate program and the FFE program. Show up to class on this date.
Oh, are you serious?
She got it to where I didn't have to retake the GRE, which now, they're not requiring that as much.
Right.
But I just did not want to do that again.
And so
it worked out. I changed from F&P and I got my master's in nursing education. And then I got my postmaster's as a gerontological nurse practitioner because I love working with older adults. And it's worked out. It came full circle. So that's a little bit about me to kind of understand why I'm the way I am and how I'm wired.
Wow.
Which, by the way, I never do anything halfway. So in my second undergraduate degree, I have a BSN in nursing with a minor in psychology. My BA I got in biology with a minor in Bible and French. And then I went to grad school and I double majored in nursing education and as a nurse practitioner.
So you love learning. You love learning.
I do love learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm like, okay, where do I want to dig first? I'm still stuck on the high school internship, right? And how you had them year after year. So I'm thinking for someone who's interested in the field, find your way into an internship. in high school, right? Start to test the waters.
Yes. I mean, I encourage kids here in Indiana, 16 or above, you can become a CNA. And if you're interested in nursing, get your CNA certification, get a job working in a nursing home, assisted living, home health care, get your feet wet. Understand if this is something that you want to do. Too many of my peers went to nursing school and became nurses and then realized they didn't want to be a nurse.
Yeah.
And so this kind of gives you an in. And also, I did mention, but because I had experience as a CNA, that helped me get hired into the hospital to work as a nurse tech while I was in nursing school. So that I got more exposure and got to do more procedures on the med surg floor. So by the time I graduated, I really didn't want to do med surg. I knew psychiatry was where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And that's where I went into psychiatry right from nursing school, because that's I had already done a lot as a nurse tech. So yeah.
Let's dive a little bit deeper here, because my mom, when she retired, she became a CNA, which was interesting. It was a shift for her. She started, like, her first career was in nursing. Then she went into financial services until she was, I don't know, 60 maybe-ish, give or take, late 50s. Then she retired and went to become a CNA, because truly at her core, that's what she enjoyed doing. One of my really good friends who is now, I think she's an LPN now, started as a CNA. So I have an idea of what a CNA does, but for someone thinking, I want to be a nurse, I don't know where to start, talk to us a little bit more about what a CNA does and really how that differs, I guess, from the next phase. You know, are we thinking RN, nurse practitioner, LPN? What's the difference between a CNA and what other nurses do? And what does CNA stand for? I know, but
yes,
tell us.
Right.
Yeah.
So certified nursing assistant. So you are the eyes and ears of the nurse. A lot of times the CNA take care of the patients and do the basic care, taking them to the bathroom, helping them get bathed, helping them get dressed, sometimes feeding someone. And, you're integral in making sure that they don't get skin breakdown. Don't have falls. So the CNA's role is very critical. And actually, a lot of what the CNA does and how they document what they do can impact how a legal case comes out for a case. So, for example, there was one case that I had, and they were looking at whether or not someone was turned and repositioned. And if the CNA doesn't document that this person was turned and repositioned and call lights in place, all those things that we train them to do, it can come back on the facility, and they can actually be liable if that person develops a bed sore. So having them put that documentation in there and being accurate and timely with their documentation, remembering now that a lot of things are electronic, and so they timestamp everything, could be key to your legal case. So the role of the CNA is very important, and it's the entryway into the healthcare field for a lot of people. Just learning that basic care. Because I was a CNA prior to going to nursing school, I already knew how to make a bed. I already knew how to lift a person.
And so those
are your fundamentals that you get in your first nursing class. So I already knew how to talk to patients. You'd be surprised. So even ahead of some medical students, I had already had patient contact. So I knew how to ask questions and to listen, because I had to do that as a CNA. So that served me when I was becoming a nurse. But you build on your skills as you go up the ladder. So a licensed practical nurse has a lot of the skill-based competencies for nursing, but there's still some things that they can't do, like hang blood and things like that. They are not responsible for the actual plan of care. They can give input into it, but it's the RN, the registered nurse, that develops the plan of care for the patient. And oftentimes it is under the direction of the registered nurse that the LPN and the CNA would then fall.
Okay.
And so that's the progression. And then, of course, as a nurse practitioner, I'm an advanced practice registered nurse, which means that I can assess and diagnose the patients as well, and provide direction and treatment. And oftentimes I work in collaboration, not supervision, but collaboration with the physician. That's very important.
Yeah.
And so I'm responsible for the medical decisions that I make, as well as the physician's responsible for his or her medical decisions. So when I put together that plan of care, I have to go based on the appropriate guidelines and the standard of care. Same with nursing. Nurses have to follow the guidelines of the standard of care. So if, let's say, you have a wound, one of the things that you'll want to do is to get the pressure off of that wound area so it won't make it worse. That's part of the standard of care. What I do as a legal nurse consultant is that I look at the medical case that they have presented to see if there were breaches in the standard of care for nursing.
Okay.
And if they didn't do what they should do, is that something that's going to impact the injury that happened? So is it related to the injury or whatever that happened in the case, the issue at hand? So, for example, I had a patient who, a case where the resident was in her room. They put her on a bedside commode. For whatever reason, the resident hadn't tried to walk on her own or get up at all prior to this. The aide forgot something that she needed to help her, so she went out to the hallway to get it. At that time, the patient got up and tried to, I don't know, she tried to wipe herself. I don't know what she was thinking, but got up and tried to walk, fell and broke her hip. Ultimately, it was a breach in the standard of care because they let that resident alone, and the CNA left her in the room alone on the bedside commode. So that was what the plaintiff attorney was alleging, and then we were looking at whether or not that was a standard breach. And then again, this woman had never fallen before at the facility, never had tried to get herself off of the toilet in her room, but they had her I can't remember why they had her on a bedside commode instead of the toilet in her room. But at that time, she chose to try to get up, and she fell and broke her hip. Unfortunately, these things happen. You can't predict everything.
Right. So she wasn't a fall risk. No one was aware that, but there are certain things, standard of care, that you just need to be mindful of across the board. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So legal nurse consultant, right? I mentioned this was the first time I'd ever heard that. And you just touched on, it sounds like some of the work you do in partnership with, I imagine, insurance professionals, attorneys, right?
Attorneys, yes.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit more about how you segued into that, or how, maybe better word, you added that to your resume, right? Like, what led to that from working in hospice?
Yeah. So I had in my career, I've worked for long-term care. I was the nurse practitioner for 6 different facilities at one time.
Wow.
And also worked in hospice care. And I worked for hospice as both an aide years ago, and then came back as a nurse practitioner in hospice. And so I was doing those things and teaching CNAs at the same time. I was working as an instructor. I had a business with my other partners at the time training CNAs.
Okay.
And I got a letter in the mail. You get a letter from an attorney's office. Your first thing is to provide your heart just slinks, right? You're like, oh no.
Right, exactly.
But it was actually a letter from an attorney asking me to be on a medical review panel for a large contentious legal case. And I'd never done this before, but I actually had sat on a peer review panel for other practitioners for outside agencies. So he asked me to sit on this medical in Indiana. If you sue someone for medical malpractice, negligence, etc., it has to go before the Board of Insurance, and they convene a medical review panel of experts to review the case to see if it should be sent on for trial.
Okay.
before you ever get to the trial process. So I was invited to sit on this panel as the nurse expert. So I get this case, and it's boxes of documents, because they were all paper at this time, just boxes of documents that I had to review. And so I took my time, and I think I reviewed those records at least 3 times. This is my first case, so I was excited about it. And I'm gonna, and I want to do a good job. And it's boxes and boxes of records. And so, I took what the plaintiff's attorney was saying, and I looked at the complaint and looked at each thing that they were complaining about. And then I looked at the medical record to see if, if there were matches to what they were claiming, not there. Again, my role is to be objective. So I'm the objective. Right. So I'm not for plaintiff or defense in this case. And so my role is to be objective. And so, I just kind of went item by item. Well, after you do your review and you get together as a panel, you discuss your findings and you give your opinion, then after that, the attorneys, particularly the plaintiff attorney, especially if it doesn't go in their favor, they will ask you to be deposed. So you'll have to do a deposition, and they ask you questions about your case and why you had that opinion. And, ultimately they're going to try to change your mind of your opinion, etc. So I'm in the middle of this deposition with this attorney who's very contentious. But I'd been through, my background has been dealing with contentious people pretty much all my life because of what I do in psychiatry. Right. And the fact that I'm sorry, it may sound like I'm bagging on physicians, but I'm not. But I've had my share of doctors yelling at you for, as a nurse, you deal with this kind of stuff all the time. Doctors yelling at you for no reason, etc. But I was always the type of person that's like, okay, you may get away with it once, maybe twice, but after that, we're going to have a conversation. Yeah. And I'm a big girl. I'm going to just go to your office and I'm going to sit outside your office and you have to come out sometime and we're going to have a polite conversation about this and what we can do to rectify this. And after that, I usually don't have those issues anymore. Because I'm very direct.
I love it.
But so I was used to that, and I've been through joint commission and state survey, so I'm sitting there and, he's pretty much being very insulting to me and belittling nursing and etc. And I just maintained my calm and answered his questions to the best of my ability and did the same for the defense. And she was so impressed by my composure during this deposition. When basically he was just being a big jerk. I mean, he was going above and beyond your usual deposition. Yeah. This was, let's just say he's not a pleasant person to work with. Okay. And so I just, like, dude, it is what it is. I'm just going to tell you the facts. Right. I can't make stuff up to make you happy. That's not what my role is. I said, this is the facts of the case. And so she was so impressed that she started to hire me. And that's how I started my business. But when they asked me to be on this medical review panel, they said, okay, this is what we're going to pay you for your time. And then if they get to the deposition phase, let us know what your fee schedule is. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have one. Right. Let me get back to you. So I was like, let me get back to you on that one. And I rushed back and did some research and figured out what I should charge. It went from there. And I have to say, I've been really enjoy being of assistance. I've helped review cases for merit. The plaintiff attorney wants to know, hey, should we even bother with this case, right? Is it something you think that there's there enough that we can, proceed? And so I'll do those. I'll help with chronologies if they need help with. I do the behind the scenes stuff, or they may contact me as an expert and say, we want your expert opinion on whether or not the standard of care was breached in this case. So I've worked with attorneys in a variety of different ways.
I love it. It
on both sides.
Rewarding. Yeah, it is. Sounds very rewarding. So I'm still high school internship CNA, right? Because I want to hear more. I'm loving the conversation around the progression. I'm thinking, so true story. I went to school to be a medical assistant once upon
Mm-hmm.
a time. So my now 24-year-old was probably 3, 4, 5, maybe something like that. And I went and I just wanted to test it out. And I was good with the I can't think of the word. My anatomy class did great. Medical terminology did great. When it got to we're going to have to give needles kind of thing, and I was like, yeah, this is where I back out, right? This is where it's no longer for me. Thank you, but no thank you. And she's like, you have straight A's. I was like, yeah, but this is where I would fail. So I think I'm good. I know this isn't for me. Some of us test the water. And I think part of
Mm-hmm.
that was because my mom, at one point, like I mentioned, was in the field. My sister was a CNA. My little brother is actually now a nurse. He actually works in a prison as a nurse. So I think about the student who's like, I want to try this. And you mentioned something I hadn't thought about, which is you can be a CNA at a young age, right? It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
require a lot of experience. You also mentioned educating CNAs and training them, right? I have actually seen a number of postings or ads where you can get licensed and this and that. How do you find a legit awesome CNA program, right? That's going to kind of position you for success with your foot in the door of nursing.
One of the things to start with is your Department of Health or State Board of Nursing website
Okay.
to make sure that the program you're looking at is on the accredited list.
Got it.
When we had our program, you have to maintain certain standards to stay on that list.
Mm-hmm.
That means people have to pass their certification test.
Yeah, right. That makes sense.
And so look for that. The other thing is to look at how the classes are structured and the learning style. So when I took my CNA training, it was through the facility.
Okay.
You had a week of classroom at that time, and then you had 2 weeks on the floor in training at the facility, and then the state came in and tested you when you had your hours. Well, this is before they increased the hours in the state of Indiana and before they added like double the number of procedures you had to know. So you still have 105 hours that you have to have in order to become a CNA in the state of Indiana. So how they divvy up those hours is important. So some programs will cram everything into like 8-hour days. And so you're there Monday through Friday for 8 hours, and they'll cram all your learning into like a week and get you out. Now, if you're the person that has, you're working a full-time job, you've got life happening, you're taking other classes, that 8-hour schedule may not work for you.
Yeah.
The way we structure, and that's one of the reasons why we structured our program differently when we had our program, is that we purposely did our days on like Wednesdays and Thursdays and Saturdays.
Okay.
And so you would have 4 to 5 hour blocks of training, and then you would have your clinical hours. And so that way you could still work. A lot of them were working in housekeeping and they were becoming CNAs. You could still have your life and take care of your family. And we stretched it out till about 6 to 8 weeks for the program. Okay. So you have time to get all your hours in so we wouldn't disrupt your life as much as possible. Yeah. So we purposely structured our program for those people that were older, maybe had life experience, needed the extra time. The people who hadn't been in school in forever. Our oldest student was 65 years old.
Wow.
Our youngest student was 16. They happened to be in the same class. That was kind of interesting too. But yeah, so these are people that, their study skills may be a little rusty. Okay. And so we purposely chose to work with the people that may not get into like the university programs, because it doesn't have to be a university program. And we worked with them to get them to be successful. Out of that program that we had, our very first class, one of the students that was a CNA became a nursing home administrator. He went back to school, became a nursing home administrator. We've had several future nurses come through that class and come back and become nurses.
Wow.
One is a physician assistant. I think one is in NP school now.
Okay.
So we've had a lot of people to come through our program. And so you have to look at the nature of the program. Is it one that, they plop you in front of a computer and expect you to figure it out and get it? Or are they going to be more supportive and hands-on and really help you grow? And we wrote our program so our students had to write a paper.
Okay.
This is a CNA program.
Wow.
But the goal was to get you ready to go to nursing school should you choose to go on. So we had them write a paper on a health system. They chose like a body system, and they wrote a little paper, 3 pages. Wasn't that big, but it was the idea of having to do that.
Yeah.
And then not only did they have to do that as their project for CNA, we had a graduation ceremony. And they got to walk across the stage to receive their certificates.
Nice.
That was huge. We had one student that came to us and said, this is the first time I've been able to walk across the stage ever in my life. She had a GED. She never had a ceremony. She was so proud. She was a single mom, invited all her kids to see her walk across the stage, get her certificate, to get her job.
I love it.
For me, that made it so worth it.
Yeah.
That made it so worth it. And so it depends on where you are in your life. So I'm going to say as a young person, if you're really interested in becoming a nurse or going further, I had one student, she was a CNA. She came to my qualified medication aid program, which is kind of like a step above a CNA where you're able to give meds under supervision of the nurse.
Okay.
She took my QMA program, became a QMA, worked at the facility. The facility was helping her go to nursing school. So she's, had enrolled in nursing school and was becoming a nurse. When you move from up the ladder, you begin to see that there are so many things that you didn't know of why you're doing what you were doing. From my bachelor's program to my master's program was a big gap for me to see the science and the research behind why we do some of the things that we do. And so as a CNA, you kind of get introduced into the task, the physical things that you would do, understand and see the roles of everybody that interacts with the patient in the healthcare system. And it gives you a little bit of a taste of what it's like. And you've already experienced the yuckiness of it, as I like to say, the yucky parts that people always cringe about, like taking people and putting them in the bathroom and cleaning up vomit and all that stuff. You've already done that stuff. So you made it. You've made it, right? Yeah. So now it's the other stuff. It's the science. It's the art. It's the learning to do the higher level of care. That's where you need to be. So I say the best nurses are the ones that were CNAs.
Wow.
Because you know what it is to get in. And I will say, even as an NP, I still change people. I when I worked in a nursing home, if I'm going in to look at your wound and you need to be put on the bedpan, I'm going to put you on the bedpan. It's easier to do it while we're all there than to try to find this poor CNA somewhere in somebody else's room, drag them down there. Why? We're all nurses here. Let's get them on the toilet. Let's do what we need to do. Let's clean them up if they're dirty. I got to look their wound anyway. Let's clean their backside while we're here. Because that's what we do. So I tried to lead by example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is so good. Let me ask you this then, because you've been in this space for so long, earning potential for a CNA. What does that look like? So can someone go through a CNA program, let's say, as a 17, 18, 19-year-old and come out with maybe a few extra dollars to then pay for that next level of education? What does that look like?
Yeah. So right now it's a good time to be in healthcare because everybody's short-staffed. And so they're paying more. You can go to McDonald's now and make $12 an hour. You can come and start your career as a CNA and make $12, $15, $16, $18 an hour.
Wow.
I don't know about many 16-year-olds that can come in and make $18 an hour.
No.
By the way, when I started out as a brand new RN, that's what I made, $18 an hour back then. That was big time. When I was a CNA, I'll never forget, when they raised minimum wage and I went up to $4.25 an hour. I thought I was rolling in money.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
it was $3.85.
Wow.
It was $3.85 an hour. And so when I worked at the hospital, I had gotten up to $7.25 an hour at that time. And I remember I was at this one facility, and because my wages had gone up, and I transferred within the parent company, I was told, don't tell the other people what you're making because you're making more than anybody else here.
Ooh.
Because they had to honor what I was making at the other place because I transferred within the company. Needless to say, I didn't stay too long there.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up getting hired into the hospital and making $1 more an hour, and I was like, woohoo! And I was able to learn a lot more. And because I had my foot in the door at the hospital, it made it so much easier for me to find a job when I finished nursing school.
This is so good. I mean, like, if I'm being honest, I don't think I'll switch careers. I don't think it'll happen. I think HR is where I'm supposed to be. But you make this sound so attractive, right? Like, there's something about this progression and the rewards. And I just remember, and I think through my interactions with the medical professionals who were there for my dad, you mentioned hospice. He passed away 2 years ago, 2 days ago. And I remember the team that rallied around to provide that care. Like, that's such a special time. And I think about just the life-changing impact a good nurse can have. And it's huge. So to have the honor of talking to you today, I'm like, I love this. I can't do it, but I know my limits. But I love this. And so to talk to someone who has educated folks to be the best CNAs and the best nurses, like, this feels so good. We've talked about kind of the foot in the door. Mm-hmm. CNA being a great place to start. You can do it at a young age. What else do you advise for someone who wants to, maybe become a nurse? They're thinking about it. How'd you get your internship, right? Are there volunteer opportunities they should be thinking about now? What is that? And 1, 2, 3, third piece, mentorship, right? Mm-hmm. And what that looks like. How do you find a mentor, someone to kind of pour into you as you start this journey?
Well, I was at first, my guidance counselor, I think, turned me into the internship.
Okay.
They were looking for high school students to do summer jobs. And it was a program, and you had to apply to get in. And so it was a partnership with this high school and the medical college. And they had this summer program. And so look for opportunities, talk to your guidance counselor, but look for those opportunities in your community that can help you go further. And, don't be afraid to apply. That's the other thing. We talk ourselves out of a lot of stuff.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to go for it.
Yeah.
If you're really thinking of being in any type of the STEM fields and medical, anything like that, take the hard classes. Don't be afraid to try. Take the extra English class, because a lot of what you need to do is communication.
Yes.
And writing. Take the science class and learn about it. And really do your research. And then if you've got local people in your family, your church, or even your local pediatrician, ask them how you can spend a day following them.
I love it.
I was very fortunate that, again, I had medical people in my family. And so part of my undergrad is I had to spend 2 weeks with a physician, so I chose my cousin. I was like, let me come to your house and shadow you for 2 weeks. He's an OB, as I said. I learned so much of that 2 weeks. And the biggest lesson I learned is I am not an OB nurse.
At all.
No. That is not my cup of tea.
Not your ministry, not your calling.
No, not at all. I said, if you're having a baby, if you call me at 2:00 in the morning and wake me up, you better be having a baby. There's no Braxton Hicks with me. I'll be very upset with you. I like my sleep.
Not your thing, Tina. Not your thing.
No, it was not my thing. We had an 18-year-old that was her first baby, and she was screaming and carrying on so much. I mean, just way extra over the top. And I'm like, now you know, I don't think you'll ever want to go through this experience again. Will you keep your legs closed? That's how I was thinking. Couldn't say it, but I was thinking
you were thinking it.
She was disturbing all the other moms on the unit. It was really bad.
Yeah.
It was really bad. And I'm just like, child. I said, you just lucky. Okay. They had the patience of Job to deal with her. And I'm like, I don't have that patience. So I learned that. That's not my cup of tea. So I knew OB was never for me, but look for those opportunities. You could always volunteer at a nursing home, passing out water.
This is so good.
Visiting with the residents. They're starving for attention. Yeah. And, they would love to have someone come in and help them with activities,
Yeah.
Get to be around people that you're interested in, what you wanted to do. I always wanted to be Quincy, by the way. I'm dating myself here. I wanted to be Quincy growing up.
We're around the same age, then it's okay.
Yeah. So I when I became a legal nurse consultant, I was like, this is the closest I'm going to get to being Quincy. My dream job was to be a coroner one day.
Wow.
I know that sounds morbid, but I had, during my internship that I had at the hospital, a lot of the doctors would love to show them what they do. So, we get to round with some of them and see what was happening. And so I spent a lot of time in the pathology lab, and I attended 3 different autopsies. All as a high school student.
I need to breathe. Again, I know my limit. There are things that just aren't for me. Let me breathe on that. But that's good.
Yeah.
Because you got to figure out what you wanted to do, maybe, but you knew what you didn't want to do, right? You had that exposure early on. I think those interactions, those volunteer opportunities, those internships, that shadowing saves folks a lot of time and money down the road, right? Because you're not bumping your head, jumping into a role, and you're like, I'm like, you don't like it. You knew from a high school student, this was not for you.
This was not, I learned early on to when there's something I know. Now I'm going to say this. Just because you're uncomfortable doesn't mean that that's not where you're supposed to be.
Okay.
There's a very big difference. I knew that OB was not for me because I couldn't have the empathy and the patience that I needed to take care of them. And when I was in grad school, I had midwifery friends in the same classes with me. And I'm like, I would be bored out of my mind.
Wow.
Because I was like, it's boring, the same thing, have a baby. I said, what would make it exciting for me was that something bad would happen and you wouldn't want that for your patient. But my midwife friends are like, oh no, every birth is different. I was like, no, it's not.
They're pretty much all the same at this point.
No, not at all. I would be bored out of my mind. I learned that working in the lab.
Wow.
I could not see myself working in the lab day in and day out doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Put the, pull up the blood, put it on the plate, smear it over the agar plate, label it, flip it over. I'm like, that's the most boring thing in the world, right? It was fun when I was in the experience, right?
Yeah.
I was learning about it, but I also learned that that's not me. I would not want to do that every day.
Right.
I think that's one of the reasons why I gravitated to psychiatry and geriatrics, because your day is never the same.
I'm sure.
You don't know what you're going to walk into.
Minute to minute. Yeah.
And a lot of my patients, because of the nature of where I was, had a lot of complicated things going on. So it's like a big puzzle piece for me. Wow. And that's what I enjoyed. And just hearing the life experiences of the different residents was very enjoyable for me. I remember I was in the FNP program, Family Nurse Practitioner program, before I switched to geriatrics. And I had come out of my geriatric rotation. I was going to my pediatric rotation, and I was miserable. Not because I don't love kids. I really do. I just don't want to treat them.
Mm.
A lot of it had, and I'd never done peds before. So I said, I'm going to give it a go.
Right.
Never done it. Let me give it a go. I worked with adolescents, but adolescents are basically mini adults. They're not really kids.
Yeah.
And babies. And so I started doing that, and it was fine, but it didn't make my heart sing. And I kept thinking to myself, I wonder if I can go back and visit some of the residents and just see how they're doing, even though my rotation was
right.
I was missing
it. Was still pulling you. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I realized I don't want to do kids. I don't want to do peds, but I never tried it. So I gave it a go.
Yeah.
But I realized that's not where my heart was. My heart was with older adults. And, I love it. I love working with adults, and I'll work with adolescents because I did that when I was a staff nurse. I worked with adolescents too, but again, they're like mini adults, right? And I love working with the teenagers. And other people are like, "Oh, you work with teenagers?" It's like, yeah, because I talk to them like they have sense, whether or not they do or not. But I treat them, like adults. I talk to them, and we get. I still work with youth, by the way, but in a different capacity. As a youth detention center chaplain, I go in and do that sometimes.
Yeah. Wow.
So
you wear many hats.
I do.
And it sounds like, and I mean this, you actually enjoy the hats you wear for different reasons, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love this.
Yes. Yeah. I never intended to be an entrepreneur. I never intended to have a business. It was furthest from my mind when it happened. But now I can't imagine doing anything else. And that's the nature and the wonder of being in nursing, is because I chose nursing that I've been able to do all these other things and try new things that I probably wouldn't have had that freedom to do that had I been in medicine.
I'm telling you, I'm not going to do it, but I'm thinking, this sounds so exciting. Like, maybe this is the next career. It's not. Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking, maybe. Like, this sounds, my mom never made it sound that exciting. This sounds so exciting. And my brother's experience with being a nurse is very different because he's in a prison. Mm-hmm. So, and he's a Marine vet. So like, he's just wired different. Okay.
Yes.
But you make all of this sound so exciting. Like, I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to think about it. Just think about it. I could keep talking, but I want to be respectful of time. So this is good. Tell me, recognizing that we call this show The Keys to the Office, right? We ask for one major key. Like, what would you tell a student now? High school students apparently can start having these thoughts. High school, college, traditional, or even non-traditional. What's one major key to success, to getting their foot in the door? One thing, and you've already shared so many, but what's the one that would really, like, I don't know, take it to the next level for them?
Setting your intention. Setting your intention. I have always been the curious person, right?
Okay, yeah.
I'm always open for new opportunities. But I've always had the intention that whatever I do, I'm going to go all in.
Mm.
And so even when, like I said, I started out in the F&P program and I made a pivot, I was okay with making that pivot. I realized that's not where I'm supposed to be. It's okay to make a change.
Right.
When I was going to go to medical school, I realized that's not where I need to be. It's okay to make a change. Mm-hmm. But when I saw the path that I knew I was supposed to take, I was very intentional in finding the resources to get what I needed so that I can make it happen. And so I look for the scholarships, right? I look for the internships. I took the extra classes. Mm-hmm. I positioned myself to get to know the leadership at the hospital.
Yeah.
And to learn from them. And I sought out those mentors. That was the third question we didn't get to, but the mentorship. Seeking out those mentors, right?
Yeah.
Wherever you are. So contact your local nursing association. It was because I said yes as a student nurse to sitting on the committee for the state nurses association is how I met that dean who remembered me, who got me into graduate school.
Wow.
it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't said yes to the opportunity to sit on the committee to represent student nurses.
Mm-hmm.
So look for those opportunities that present themselves to you. Oftentimes doors open up for me and I walk through them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when the doors are shut, and I recognize that there's a reason for certain doors to be shut, like with peds, I move on, pivot, and move on. But I also had a tenacity. What happened to me in high school, when I first started high school, was a teacher made the mistake of saying something to the effect that I couldn't do something. And from that day on,
Mm-hmm.
I said, oh, yes, I'll prove you differently. Now, in junior high, I'm going to just do the real. In junior high, I kind of got bored with school, so I really didn't try.
Okay.
I never turned in my homework. But I just show up and take the test and pass.
Wow.
Which would make my teachers very mad. So I skated by in junior high. I'm like, the only reason why I pulled it out of the D's was because my mom was on my case, right? And I just didn't want to deal, right?
Yep.
And so
wow.
I go and take the test, ace the test. This is how I just was very bored, and I didn't want to do anything in junior high. And so when I got to high school, the teacher had made that comment about stuff I couldn't do because of my junior high records.
Yeah.
Little
did that teacher know.
You don't tell me what I can and can't do.
Exactly.
So I decided that I was just going to go all in and do all my homework, get all my stuff done. So I ended up with straight A's that first semester.
Ooh.
And it was that point I said, and by the way, my dad paid me for every A that I got.
Okay.
So I made like $100 or something like that. So I'm like, I think I'm going to do this again. So I set my intention to get straight A's every semester, because then someone said, oh, you can be valedictorian. I was like, oh, all right. So I decided I was going to be valedictorian, and I was. Yes, I was going to be valedictorian of the school, because what I realized is that you get good grades, people leave you alone, and they give you free things.
Very true. Very true.
So I learned the value of studying hard because it paid off in rewards later on.
Yeah.
And so I took that lesson. So when it looks like it's, kind of tough right now, that learning curve, I understand that later on it will pay off. It will give me dividends.
Yeah.
So I reinvest in myself, and I continue to reinvest in myself and take a class or a course or something like that so that I can get better at what I do. And so take that lesson of setting those intentions. So I remember when I got my report card and I got straight A's, and I was like, well, look at there. And I thought, well, and everybody was like, oh, this is great. Now all the teachers are all excited. And I'm like, then I started getting money, and I'm like, oh, so this is how this works. Okay.
Yeah. I love this.
So I set that intention that I was going to be valedictorian.
Yeah.
I worked hard at it. I added the extra classes. What was great is that we got all this free stuff. I'll never forget it. I was telling one of my fellow classmates years later after graduating and all the stuff at one of our events, and I happened to run into him, and he said, yeah, you were always studying and so brainy in high school and blah, blah, blah. I said, it's because I got free stuff. He said, what are you talking about? As a freshman, at the end of the year, everybody, all the students that got the top grades, they took them out to lunch at the Hilton.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got, in your freshman year, you got like a padfolio, and you got this whole thing, and you got to meet, your local senators and, all congressmen and all that kind of stuff, right? They took you out this big lunch. You got to ride in the limo, all that. By the time you became a senior and you got the top grades. They not only did the limo ride and they had lunch at the Hilton, they gave you a tennis bracelet, you got a briefcase, you had lunch with your local state representative, you had the newspaper come out taking your picture, you had people giving you scholarships, you had all this stuff. And I recognized and said, if you work hard, get good grades, and do as you're supposed to do, in the end, it pays off and you get great dividends. And so, yeah, that's how I figured it out, that hard work does pay off in the end. And I also figured out, if you work hard now, you don't have to work as hard later.
Say that again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Put the work in now.
You put the work in now, you get prepared, and then the opportunities come.
Yeah.
I never thought to be an entrepreneur. I never thought to do a weekly news show, a nursing news show on Facebook Live. Yep. I never thought that I would turn those skills that I learned to be a radio disc jockey in high school and college and use that to do a radio show. Wow. I never thought that I would have all those experiences, but every little experience that I had have come to fruition. I mean, I was a CNA, and then I turned around and became a teacher of CNAs and started my own training school. And I still teach CNAs now. I use that education that I have to teach other nurses and new nurse practitioners coming in. I've been a mentor and a coach. And then now I've taken all of that I've learned about business, and I started the Nurse Shark Academy to help other nurses build and launch their own businesses.
Tell us about it, please. I want to hear more. Okay, yeah. Pause, because I read about it, and then I'm like, I want to make sure we get to this. Nurse Shark Academy. This is exciting to me. Go.
Okay, so shorthand. I started because I was in business and doing a lot of stuff in the community. People started coming to me and saying, "How do I? How do I? Other nurses, how do I?" And so I was doing a lot of one-on-one, on the fly thing, and really helping people out. And then it dawned on me, you need to, one, make this a formal coaching program, and two, in order to conserve your time and energy, have them pay for your expertise, because you don't have the time to waste. And I give a lot of free stuff away. I do. You can tell I'm a giver. Yep. I'm just going to lay it all out there and be bare. Yep. But I also recognize that if you're really serious about starting a business, you have to have the resources behind you and the mindset to get started. And this weeds out a lot of the people that are just kind of thinking about it and on the fence and don't really want to do anything. This kind of helps with that. So I developed a formal coaching program that takes you from idea to launch. You have 6 sessions. We work through the whole part of building your business plan. And I say to nurses, if you can write a nursing care plan, you can write a business plan. Wow. This isn't your dried up, business plan that people think of. No, this is a plan for your business. We're going to put those steps in place. So if you go to a lender, you go to the bank, or you go to some program and you want money, you have everything you need to get started.
Yeah.
It's all there. I had one of my sharks come back to me and said, Miss Tina, I just had to get my new bank account because she had opened up another part of her business. And they asked me for my financials, and I was able to pull it right there because I had it in my business plan. I said, there's a reason why you work hard now, so it's easy later. So you're not going back and trying to fix things. I worked with a lot of nurses that started businesses, and, we're very good about doing the thing, right? We'll do our nursing stuff all day, every day.
Right.
But it's that other stuff that, in business that you have to deal with. The policies, the procedures, the job descriptions, all that kind of stuff. I've got someone now that wants to hire an MP. And I'm like, great. You have a job ad for me? Oh, I don't have that yet. Well, you're not ready to talk to me. I can't sit down on my social if I don't know what I'm sending out. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's putting that foundation in. That's where I come in. There are wonderful business coaches out there, and I work with a few of them myself. They're my coaches. They help take you to that next level once you're in business. But my niche are the people that are just getting started, who have all the questions of, how do I even get an LLC? And what does that even mean?
Right.
And how do I write a business plan? Because if you don't have a plan of what a vision for your business, you're going to be easily distracted. You're going to go off in different places. I've been there, done that, understand that. We need to have a step-by-step plan and set your intentions of where you want to go with your business so it can thrive and grow. Otherwise, you'll be like one of my former students who was ready to expand her business, wanted to open up a satellite location, was just calling to ask me if I knew of a nurse that could work for her. And I said, great, what's the job description? She sent me a list of duties. I said, well, what's your onboarding process? She didn't really have one.
Yeah.
I said, well, what are your policies and procedures so they can duplicate what you're doing in your existing office in Indianapolis so they can do it here in Anderson? Had nothing. Nothing. And so many of us start out in business that way. Yeah. We start doing the thing and we leave the foundational pieces. And then what happens? We get audited. State comes in. Incident happens. And then now you're owing money back to Medicare, Medicaid, or something like that. You don't have good policies in place to make sure your home health aides are checking in when they're actually in the building or in the resident's home, the patient's home. All those different things happen. Yeah. I said, so you need to make sure you have those systems in place. And when you're ready to grow, it's already there. You don't have to recreate things and backpedal and retrain people. You've already done the foundational pieces. So that's what I teach.
I love this. Nurse Shark Academy.
So other nurses can have their own businesses and let people know that, yes, nurses can be business owners. And there's so many different things that you can do to become, you can do many things in nursing. And I tell people, don't leave your profession. You may leave your job. Don't leave your profession. Do all kinds of things. There's nurse bloggers and nurse comedians out there. And yes, what? Nurse Blake. Yes. He's on tour right now.
This is so exciting.
There's so many things you can do as a nurse. You just need to be open and find out what really works for you. And our very first session in the Nurse Shark Academy is talking about that why. Yeah. Why do you want to be an entrepreneur? Why would your business be, why your business exists? What need do you serve? And why is this, for you? If it doesn't make your heart sing, you're not going to want to do it for the rest of your life. I had a business model that was given to me, presented to me of opening up a lice clinic, a lice removal clinic. Okay. A school nurse was doing it, making great money. I researched it, looked at the market. We would be the third in the market to have this system to remove head lice. There's a big market for it. Wow. We were well positioned to do it. You could make easily 6 figures for this. And I thought this would be a great business model. But here's where it stopped. I sat down and thought about it. And I said, now, you don't like to deal with head lice. Even the thought of it is giving you the heebie-jeebies right now. You would be miserable if you had to do this job every day. I don't care how much money you're making. Yeah. This job would not make your heart sing. And like I said, I researched the whole thing, the franchise agreement.
It's lucrative.
Yeah. And I'm like, this is not for me. Yeah. But you know what? It might be a good business for somebody else. And so if that's a business you want to get into, talk to me. I know a couple people that are in this business and they're doing very well with it, but not for me. Yeah. Not for me. I'm like, but I had to learn that. I had to stay true to my why, my intention, what was driving me. And what I discovered is I like to see other people win.
I love this.
I get the most joy. Yes, seeing other people win. When I was teaching my CNA students and I saw them go on to become nursing home administrators and PAs and all this other stuff, I'm like, that makes me feel good because I know I invested in them. Yeah. And my initial investment brought out some fruit. And that's what I do with the Nurse Shark Academy. I invest in others as they're starting out because, it's going to be fruitful towards the end. So I like to see them thrive and grow and have their own businesses. And that's wonderful. And it makes me excited.
Yes, I'm excited. And I'm not going to do this. But I'm going to think about it. Like, seriously, you have me thinking, which is mind blowing because I am dead set on being in HR, but I'm like, okay, but nursing it sounds amazing. Like, and rewarding and exciting. And you can go down so many different paths with it. Let me refocus because it's not happening, Miss Tina. I've already made that clear. Made that clear. How can we find you on these internets? How can we support you? For those students, they're listening now who are like, I want to be in her space. I just want to like feed off of whatever she's putting out in this field. Tell us how to find you and support you and get support.
Well, you could go to my website, baxterprofessionalservices.com. Mm-hmm. That's my legal nurse consulting website. So any attorneys, if you're out there listening, you can contact me there.
Yeah.
But also the students, our email is there. But the place where I find a lot of people contact me is either LinkedIn or Facebook. We do have 2 Facebook pages. We have the Baxter Professional Services Facebook page, and we have the Nurse Shark Academy Facebook page. Mm-hmm. So any nurses out there and you're looking for your next venture, like I said, leave your job, don't leave your profession. You can turn those nursing skills into a viable business doing something else. And so you can find us there. We're always on social media. We're also on Twitter and Instagram and Alignable.
Okay.
Etc. So you can find us around. We're around.
Yes.
And then I'm excited because I'm looking to launch a podcast interviewing nurse entrepreneurs. So if you're a nurse entrepreneur and you want to be a guest, hit me up because we're starting a new podcast.
Yes. That's so why am I so excited? Again, I don't want to be a nurse, but I just want to there's something about your energy that is so exciting. And I am so energized. This has been awesome. I don't know what I was expecting. But now I'm pumped about a field that, again, I want everyone else to go into it now. I'm going to talk to my 16-year-old, almost 16. As soon as we're done, I'm going to say, listen, have you ever thought about being no, really? She wants to be a therapist. I'm like, have you ever thought about being a nurse? I'm sure we could. I'm excited about what lies ahead for students going into this field, knowing that there are individuals like you there to support them along the way and pour into them. So that's exciting.
Yes. And if, I also do public speaking. So if there's someone in there that you want me to speak to your school group or something like that, we can probably work something out. So I've been a educator and speaker for quite a while, and I've spoken all over the country and different healthcare topics and leadership in business. And like I said, I'm a big proponent of giving back and being part of the community.
Yeah.
So serve on a variety of boards and helping in things because I can never sit still. I'm not the sit still person. But yes, I do sleep. I know people always ask me, when do you sleep? Oh no, I get my sleep.
Do you? You can turn your brain off.
I have learned over the years how to do that. One of the classes I teach is stress management, by the way.
Okay.
In the wellness space.
Need that class. We all need that class at this point.
Yep.
This has been awesome. I am so thankful, so appreciative of you carving out time to chat with me. I'm actually blown away and again excited for everyone going into this field, specifically those who look like me. I get more excited about that, or look like us, right? I get excited about that. But there's so much to be done in the field itself and so many different paths to take. And again, I'm glad someone like you is there to hold hands and educate and pour into and share all that you've learned along the way. So thank you. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for your service. And in a major way, thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Talk soon.
Okay.
All right.
If you're hearing this message, you have listened to the entire episode. And for that, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please don't forget to subscribe. Leave us a review and check out our website at www.thekeystotheoffice.com. We look forward to connecting with you in a future episode. Until then, go be amazing.